This week on the Midlife Awareness Podcast.
And really sort of reorganizing around our relationship with uncertainty. And what I often say to clients is, everything that you want, whether it's a new way of relating to people or creativity or, a new way of identifying yourself or a new way of being in the world, all of that lives in uncertainty land, right? Because everything that you've done, all the patterns that you've done, all the trauma adaptations, all the perfectionism, all the overworking, over responsibility, overdoing, it's taken you likely as far as it's going to.
Welcome back to the Midlife Awareness Podcast, everybody. There's a sentence that sounds comforting until you actually sit with it. You are already enough. For a lot of us, that doesn't land as peace, it lands as resistance. Because if I'm already enough, why am I still anxious? Why do I still people please, shut down, overwork, carry this low-grade exhaustion that never quite leaves? We live in a world that tells us healing looks like effort. Try harder, think better, push through. And when nothing changes, we quietly assume the problem must be us. But what if that story is wrong? What if the issue isn't motivation, but capacity? What if self-sabotage is a nervous system that learned very early how to survive? That's why the title Always Enough, Never Done matters. Not because it promises arrival, but because it refuses to turn healing into another performance. Always enough doesn't mean nothing needs care. It means worth isn't something you earn by fixing yourself. And never done isn't failure. It's an acknowledgement that survival patterns don't shut off just because life improves. They wait for safety. They wait for consistency. They wait for permission to rest. And so many of us aren't broken. We're tired. We've been living in systems, family, religious, cultural, that rewarded us for overriding our bodies and called it strength. Anxiety isn't weakness. People-pleasing isn't manipulation. Shutdown isn't laziness. They're strategies. They're protection. And healing doesn't begin when we finally get disciplined enough. It begins when we stop fighting ourselves in the name of growth. Today's guest sits in that messy process of turning wounds into wisdom, that we can all remember our true nature, that we are always and already enough, and we still have work to do. Her work bridges personal healing with collective transformation and invites us to remember that the world needs us here in our fullest expression. Erica Bonham is a nationally sought-after speaker, licensed professional counselor, certified EMDR clinician, consultant, trainer, best-selling author, and nervous system regulations coach. She's passionate about redefining leadership as a practice of presence, resilience, equity, and joy. Erica, welcome to the Midlife Awareness Podcast, and thank you for stopping by.
Oh, thank you. I love that. That
Well,
was
thank you.
I mean, we're done.
No. No, we're not done yet. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of the book, Erica, where were you in your life that led you to write this book?
Well, it's much like the book, right? It was a continuous emergent process. I think the book has sort of been becoming for maybe my whole life, right? I don't know. But I developed a course a few years ago, just because I started realizing patterns like, oh, I offer this a lot. This is a common thing that I say a lot. And I just wanted to kind of get it down and maybe democratize it a little bit, right? Like to have it out there that people could access it. And the book was just sort of an extension of that intention. I just wanted to be able to have this a little bit of not just the information, but the invitation and the practices in the book, just a little more accessible for those that, therapy is expensive, coaching's expensive. And I just wanted to put that out in the world. So it really felt like, whatever you want to call it, universe, spirit, the divine, my highest consciousness, It was just, it wanted to come through me. And so I put it out there. Yeah.
Well, I thought the book was very good. Um, it was a very practical book, and I think that's what I like most about it. Um, Not only did you give the concepts of what we're going to talk about here tonight, but there was a lot of practicality to it, and you actually went through different types of systems, um, and how you deal with it on a daily basis. Some of the things that we can do to kind of help get our systems back into gear, and I really like those areas. But before we talk about the nervous system in itself, I want to start where the book starts. Always enough. We hear that a lot. You know, you're enough. You're enough. For a lot of people, that phrase is almost threatening. So, what happens internally when someone believes that they must earn their worth?
Mm. Yeah. Well, I always like to look at things through that lens of how is it adaptive? Because we're not going to change, just sort of like you hinted at it in the intro or in the monologue in the intro. We're not going to change things by coming at them. We have to come sort of stand back and come alongside with them. And if we can understand the parts of us that internalized hustling, right? Internalized earning, internalized tracking what our caregivers or what our maybe dogmatic community members, leadership, whether that be religion or other family members, or just the collective society and soup that we're swimming in. We kind of swim in perfectionism and efforting and goal oriented, outcome oriented, arriving, that you should be able to get somewhere. And that's just patterned. And so we learn to track that. We learn to internalize critics because it's adaptive, because our caregivers are telling us that that's how it works.
Hmm.
And so I think we first have to understand the parts of us that are continuously critical, the parts of us that are continuously chasing perfection, the parts of us that are maybe really judging ourselves or even others harshly. They do have adaptive qualities. And so if we can just sort of stand back and even just inviting your body to take that in, like, yeah, it was adaptive. How can I just be curious about it? And then when I just invite the part of you, and I actually think the balance, the both and of always, and the longer version of that is always and already enough, lovable, worthy, and inextricably connected to every other living thing on this planet, just as you are. You are part of this great web of life, just as you are. And we all have shadow. We all have not so pretty parts. We all have undigested grief or trauma or stuff to look at. And I actually find comfort in both of those things being true, because just the always enough feels like, ooh, that's like, I know I have work to do, so it doesn't feel true to
Right,
me.
right. Yeah.
But I think it's like a larger part of us. And it might be a spiritual endeavor for part of us, or, just that highest consciousness, the big S self, the capital S self. And I do ground it in our humanity as well,
Hmm.
not just our spiritual selves, but there is a part of us that is okay, that is whole, that isn't touched by the trauma or the, whatever, that is still intact. And there's parts of us that are maybe fragmented or exiled, and the dance between those two truths is where I invite people to, you know, navigate and play with play with it a little bit.
So you're a dance instructor too.
I actually am. I lead a yearly flash mob, and
Oh,
I used to
really?
teach. I do. Yeah.
Oh, that's
I
awesome.
lead the thriller dance flash mob. And I actually think dancing as a collective is one of the best things we can
Oh
do
yeah.
for our nervous system. Um,
Well, that gets
and I
into
used
your
to teach
somatic
children's
exercises.
theater. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
Um,
So I think about that metaphor of dancing and between those both ands, those seemingly opposite truths, quite a lot, and it's helpful.
well, how does that belief though shape anxiety or over responsibility?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the root of most anxiety, right, is and there's a difference between anxiety, which is like a dog paddle out of fear or out of sadness or out of pain or out of feeling something that we don't want to feel. And it's also, I've heard anxiety described as it's the disease of the future, right? And it's really about our relationship to uncertainty. And if we can actually drop into what is it that we're dog paddling out of? What is the more vulnerable emotion of likely fear? Fear is different than anxiety, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
just noticing like the more vulnerable emotion of fear. And if you were working with a really scared puppy dog, right? Would you come at it? Would you be like, you got to get over this, puppy dog, right? Come here. Like, that there's something intuitive that feels off about coming at something that's scared. But to just slowly work with fear and to be like, hey, I see you. I'm here with you. I'm offering care and love. That doesn't necessarily mean that we don't have some boundaries around our fear. And
Right.
actually the story that I often tell, and I think I told this story in the book, but when my youngest son, and I get permission from my kids to share their stories because they're 12 and 15. But um when he was in preschool, he had a lot of separation anxiety. He did not want to go. It was so traumatic, it was so hard. And I said, Milo, honey, like whether or not you go to school is not a choice, but I want to help you like learn how to feel strong in your body. And so we practiced, we would like when he was out of school, I would be like, okay, we're going to pretend, Milo, like, I'll see you later. Have a good day at school. And I would leave the room. And then I would come back like 5 seconds later. I'd be like, hi, Milo. How you doing? And he would laugh and like, okay, now we're going to practice for 30 seconds, and I'm just going to count out loud. And it was like that dip in and dip out. And we're sort of building the mastery skill, but it was still connection. But it wasn't like, okay, you're right, you never have to go to school again. We'll just wrap you in bubble wrap and
Right.
you'll never have
Right.
to face your fear. And it wasn't like, too bad, so sad, kid, you're off, I'm throwing you in the deep end of the pool with no support.
Right.
And so I almost like invite people to imagine working with their fear, working with their anxiety, working with the parts of them that are not enough, which at the root of it is fear, as in that way, like,
Hmm.
hey, I'm with you, I see you, I love you, we're going to do this together, and let's go. And fear is, it's like, honey, you're in the back seat, you're on along for this ride, but me and intuition and creativity and courage, that's my navigation system, and we're going on a ride, we're
Yeah.
going on a journey.
Yeah.
And you're here because if we're actually going to die in the next 2 minutes, we need you because you're
Yeah.
going to like help us stay alive. um but you're not driving this bus, and you're not touching the radio, and you're not navigating, and I love you, and I'm with you, you
There you
know
go. And that leads to the second part of the title, Never Done.
Yeah.
That sounds really discouraging to a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people, including me. Um, but you have a way in the book of, I guess, telling it like it actually feels like it's a relief.
Mm-hmm.
So how does the expectation of being done actually reinforce shame?
Yeah. Well, I think when we think we are done, think that's actually the moment we cause harm to
Mm.
other people, right? I used to lead basic trainings for this therapy called EMDR therapy, and part of the therapy is to do an experiential, right? You practice the therapy with other therapists that are in the training, and the therapists that would say, I've looked at all my stuff, I've dealt with all my stuff, I don't really have anything to work on. Oof, I would be like, yeah, you're the one that I've got to look out for here. And I have concerns about you with clients, because if you think that you have arrived, you probably have a very big blind spot that you're
Mm.
not seeing. And there is something magical and powerful about humility, because we can't possibly know everything. We are walking around with ancestral trauma and pre-verbal trauma and collective trauma that we don't even know how
Mm.
it is patterned in our nervous system. And when we think we're done, it's like there's no room for growth. So we have these blinders on. It's like, no, if I'm done, then I can't possibly make a mistake, or I can't possibly be okay. And then you can see how that leads to shame, right? Shame is the inherent belief that you do not belong on this planet as you are, that you are inherently broken. There's something inherently wrong with you. And humans are messy, and you're going to make mistakes. And if you have that fixed mindset that you're done, that there's an arrival point, then when you make a mistake, where do you put that?
Hmm. Right.
You're either good or you're bad. You're either right or you're wrong. And so you have to shield yourself from the truth
Mm.
that you made a mistake. And then there's no room for growth. There's no room for learning, right? And then we get kind of into that like narcissistic continuum where we don't necessarily have the personality disorder, but we have this tendency to deflect or defend ourselves or make sure that we're right. And again, that's really our need for certainty.
And you mentioned it in there that that has a lot to do with the duality type of teaching. And um, religion's really bad for this. The good evil type of situation, and it's tough to live in that world where you try to balance the two.
Oof, it is. And there's such spaciousness there, right? Like, and I always talk about the neuroscience of that binary thinking, right? Like, if you are being jackknifed on a highway, you actually want good, bad, safe, not safe, go, right?
Right.
You want fast
Yeah.
reaction, get off the road. But when you're talking to your partner, or you're navigating your relationship with yourself, or you're you know navigating your relationship with the world, that binary thinking can really be a block. And again, I would say that our survival brain, that oldest part of the brain, is really rooted in good, bad, safe, not safe, right, wrong, go, because it wants safety, and it kind of conflates safety with certainty.
Mm.
And our more evolved parts of our brain, our frontal lobes, the most human parts of us, that's where nuanced thinking comes in, where it's like there can be some seemingly opposite truths that we can actually hold space for at the same time. Like, for example, the world is really hard and brutal, and tiny, magical, beautiful things are happening every day that don't make the news. And
Right.
both of those things can be true. The trauma that you went through absolutely shaped you, and we need to have reverence and validation for what happened. And it is not who you are, it does not define you, right? Only you can do it, you know? Only you can kind of walk this path of looking at your shadows and dealing with your shit, and only you can do it. And you can't do it alone. Those are some of the common non-dualities, and those actually, like, yeah, there can be some wrestling with it, some like, oh, there's some discomfort, but also it opens up so much more space for there to be, some humanness and
Right. Right.
some art in all of that, and some mystery, and just room to be a little messy and a little wild.
And a lot of that comes back to the relationships you keep talking about in the book. So, what does it mean to relate to a healing as an ongoing relationship?
Yeah. I mean, I almost think of it just as relationship with the other person, right? Like, if you think about your partner or even your kids, right? Like, stagnating. There's not much life there, right? It just sort of atrophies if they stay the same and we never grow. And it's if we can reorient to that not enough or never done, not enough, but that continuous becoming
Right.
as sort of exciting, as sort of like, oh, I wonder what the next chapter is going to be. I wonder what the next iteration is going to be. That's really alive. There's life, there's fresh air in there. And I think it's like that, like, some curiosity, and really sort of reorganizing around our relationship with uncertainty. And what I often say to clients is, everything that you want, whether it's a new way of relating to people or creativity, or a new way of identifying yourself, or a new way of being in the world, all of that lives in uncertainty land, right? Because everything that you've done, all the patterns that you've done, all the trauma adaptations, all the perfectionism, all the overworking, over responsibility, overdoing, it's taken you likely as far as it's going to.
Hmm.
And uncertainty is where the magic is. Uncertainty is where the newness is. And if we can develop a sense of safety and love and trust that lives from within, then we can be like, hey, whatever is going to unfold, I can trust myself to be able to ride those waves. And that feels really good.
Yeah, and that's the tough part there is trying to get that trust, and living in that
Yeah.
ambiguity. But you're right,
Totally.
ambiguity, I think, is where a lot of the magic happens. So,
Right.
you named something a lot of people feel but struggle to articulate, and that is that much of the self-help that we go through teaches us self-abandonment.
Mm,
So, how do affirmations, mindset work, or productivity tools backfire for dysregulated systems?
yeah. Yeah. I kind of shit talk affirmations a lot.
Yeah, yeah, you do. Yeah, you sure do.
Even though,
That was the
but
fun
there's
part of the
paradox
book,
in
though.
that. Yeah, but there's paradox in that too, because I actually do have an affirmation practice. But, you know, like, affirmations are not sufficient. Our affirmations are not going to get you, it's affirmations are really a top down process. They are coming from the frontal lobes down. And it can almost feel like a convincing, right? We're convincing. And if we're sitting there neurotically sort of repeating, like, I am enough, I am beautiful, I am good, I am okay, right, whatever, um, there might be this other part of us that's like, no, you're not. That's not true. That's a lie. And so we're automatically in this state of cognitive dissonance and struggle. And so I think affirmations and mindset in and of themselves can be almost like a gaslight to ourselves. Like, we don't acknowledge it's another way of dog paddling out of the pain. And I'm not saying to throw the affirmation baby out with the bathwater. Like, there is some room here for that, for thought work, but it's got to be embodied, And it has to be coupled with what I call, it's like a descending path and an ascending path. And the descending path is like going toward and in and through the pain, the grief, the trauma. Where is it held in your body? Where is the constriction? Where is the bracing? Where is the discomfort? Not so that you can stew in your own shit, but so that you can alchemize that, so that you can compost that.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe there's some room for what I would call the ascending path, which is like, okay, now can we maybe shift into some affirmation work? But maybe it's more of like, even though I struggle with parts of me that don't believe that I'm enough, I ultimately believe that I am a human being, that I'm almost even moving away from the word lovable and just like, you are love itself. You
Yeah.
are awareness itself.
Yeah.
You are worthiness itself, right? Worthy even it almost implies like you have to earn it.
Yeah,
It's just like,
exactly.
nope, it's just, you just are. You are enoughness. You are spaciousness. You are nature. You are the ocean. You are energy and love. That's your true nature. And nothing and nobody can take that away from you.
And you
And so
talked about,
then you,
no, go
yeah,
ahead.
then you might be able to, but your tree is only going to grow as strong as the roots are deep. And if you're trying to do affirmation practice with no shadow work and no deeper inquiry, it's going to be pretty hollow. And you're
Yeah.
going to be, sort of that blonde yoga teacher that's like, positive vibes only, bro, like where everybody's just, you can feel the shallowness, you can feel the vapor
Yeah.
of that person.
And you talked about embodying it earlier. What happens actually to the body when people are told, hey, you just got to push through this?
Mm. Well, I would even invite your listeners and just even, and I often say this to clients, like if you came into my office and I said to you, you really just got to get over this.
I don't
You
think you'd
really
be
just
in
got,
business for very long.
yeah, exactly. I mean, I say to them, I hope you would freaking fire me. I mean, right? So just notice what happens in your body when somebody says, you really just got to get over this. You really just got to push through this. This is, I mean, okay. Mm, right? My body feels constricted. It feels like I want to move to defend myself. It feels like I want to uh almost double down on explaining my pain to the person, or I want to back away. Like, okay, this is I'm not going to go to you with my most tender parts of me because you're telling me that you're not safe. Now, here's there I do think there's some nuance, right? Because we want
Of
to
course.
not enable fragility,
Right.
right? And I see a lot of young people and they're so inundated with psychobabble and they know the language so well, and like there's this way that even grown adults can be like, you're just really crossing my boundaries, or I just really need to protect my peace, or oh my god, Miss Johnson gave me a B and it was traumatic, and I'm like, okay, hold up here, right? Like there's a way that we need to be mindful of enabling fragility, but it's tricky. And so it's like, hey, it's almost like validating the emotion while still like maybe asking consent, like, and I'm wondering if we, just can hold the perspective that you can have resiliency in this, but the way to that resiliency is to digest and process what happened, and then to re-anchor yourself in, getting through it. And there is such a thing as post-traumatic growth.
Hmm.
I think a lot of that has been watered down into tropey, you know, everything happens for a reason, or that which does not kill you makes you stronger, or no rainbows without rain. And it feels quite hollow again, right? It feels like any wisdom in those sayings has a bypassing quality to it. And I think we get to wisdom from our wounds by going down and in and toward and through them. So I mean, I know I kind of went in this very nonlinear way around it, but hopefully I'm
No,
getting at
no.
some wisdom there.
Yeah, I think you are. Well, it's not linear anyway, really. I mean,
Exactly.
you know, um, you spend a lot of time talking about the nervous system in this book, and I think here I'd like for you to take just a few moments to kind of go through what happens with the nervous system and why it was so prevalent in this book.
Yeah. Well, I kind of always say like, okay, so I use the metaphor of composting, right? Like how do we alchemize? How do we compost what no longer serves you? What is the patterning that we want to repattern? And the enzymes that break it all down, right, are compassion. So we have to be heart-centered, and we have to have a somatic body-based component of it, right? So it's like body and heart are the things that are going to help us compost what we need to compost. Because, when something happens that's traumatic or grief or even just an emotional experience that's not sufficiently processed, those things get stored in isolation in the brain. They literally get they're like, you can see them on a PET scan. Like there's lots of activation in the amygdala. There's very little communication between the right and the left brain. There's very little integration between the brainstem and the frontal lobes. And, ideally, we are in this place, what we might call the window of tolerance, where if you're regulated, you can be present, you can be joyful, you can be compassionate, you can hold nuance. There's a sense of flow and a sense of like, even if something's challenging, there's a okayness, there's a baseline of okayness. And then we move into more of a sympathetic nervous system, which is the activating nervous system. Like we got to eat, maybe we play soccer. That's like sympathetic nervous system. But if something is really agitating, angering, worrisome, scary, then we move into either the fight patterning or the flight patterning. And if that is not sufficiently processed, that will get stuck. All of that energy will get stuck and stored in the body and in the nervous system. And then over time, if it feels like truly we can't fight or run away, then we'll move into freeze or shut down. And that's like hopelessness, helplessness, feeling trapped, like you're just like either playing dead. um there can be sort of a functional freeze, right, where we're still going through the motions, but ultimately we're really in burnout or shutdown or it's like like an anesthetic has. And a lot
Yeah,
of us who grew up in situations that were conditional or dogmatic, or that either or thinking, or punishment oriented transactional love, which I think a lot of us were, even if our parents weren't totally abusive. A
right,
lot of us have the missing experience of a caregiver being able to like be calm and attuned to our emotional experiences and like be present and sturdy and grounded without either rescuing us or being angry
right,
with us.
right.
Um, and so that missing experience gets patterned into the nervous system, and we turn the dimmer switches down, and we're like, this is fine, this is fine, this is fine, and we dissociate, or we repress it. And we're just like, I'm just gonna build a wall, and we're gonna put all that shit behind that wall, and I'm never gonna touch it again. And then it leaks out, it leaks
Yeah,
out.
Yeah, yeah,
And so
yeah.
when people get into therapy or when people start doing more deeper coaching work, it's really like we're asking those dimmer switches to be turned back on. And oftentimes we have to feel some anger. We have to feel some fear. We have to feel through those things so that they can alchemize. And we're just not going to be able to do that if we don't have a body practice. If you're just swimming around in cognitive and thinking, that's just not where it's stored. So
And
we won't really get to it.
that's a great segue for the next topic, and that would be your you emphasize bottom up healing in the book and starting with the body instead of, the head or the beliefs. So, um, why doesn't insight alone create lasting change?
Yeah. I mean, again, because that's just not where trauma is stored. Trauma is stored in the the survival brain. It's a lot of activation in the right hemisphere, which was like the emotional center of the brain. And it's patterned deep in the nervous system. And so if we are just thinking, if we're just talking about it and swimming around in the content, we are really just working in the frontal lobes and we are not getting at how how it's really stored in the nervous system. And so bottom up processes, whatever that might be, like EMDR therapy or maybe some deeper parts work therapy, even just like a somatically informed person that can kind of guide you to, hmm, how is this patterned? What is the energy? Where is the activation in your system? And try to activate that with a level of heart centered consciousness and attunement, both with you and the other person and with you and yourself. That is often the missing experience, right? So it's like attunement is interwoven with safety,
Hmm.
right? Like we can't have safety without attachment. We can't have
Right,
attachment without safety. We can't have safety. It's not really that clean Maslow's a hierarchy of needs. Like we have to have safety and then we have belonging.
right.
No, it's like when we're babies, we need to be held in order to feel safe. Like our safety is interwoven with our attachment. And so when you're doing deeper work, you're going to have layers of fear, which are related to powerlessness. I didn't have any power. I didn't have any control. I didn't have any safety. And then there'll be a layer of sadness, which is
Hmm.
usually more related to the attachment rupture, to the feeling separate from other people, feeling cut off from the family, cut off from the herd. And it's just like layers of that fear, powerlessness, and then attachment, sadness. And that has to be, I mean, I bet even as I'm talking, there might be something in your heart or in your body or in your gut or in your shoulders. And just, just noticing the bracing, noticing the clenching, noticing where it is. And, you know, that's that's where we have to get to. That's where we have to help heal it. And we're not going to do that with just thinking. We're not going to solve neuroses with more neuroses.
That's a good quote right there. Uh, and the problem is regulation is hard work.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
because um there are times when it's just like things get quiet and then it's almost like, well, okay, I got to keep moving. I got to keep doing this. I got to keep doing that because it almost seems like I'm going backwards now. So, and for my own thinking here, like, can you give us a little bit of like examples on how if how to distinguish between discomfort and danger, right?
Mm, yeah.
Um, because you want to be cognizant of I don't need to fear everything, but I'm in this moment
Yeah.
of I'm not sure where I'm at, where I'm going, or what I'm doing. everything feels like it's, coming at me and attacking me at this moment.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
is there some practical steps or advice that you give people that we can see these things without having to think that we're in real danger?
Yeah. Well, the first thing that I would offer in that moment is compassion. Like, and I think that the whole there's a nervous system regulation is very trendy. If you
Oh,
look at or Instagram, you're gonna be like, oh, how to regulate your nervous system and blah blah blah. And I think there's a conflated misunderstanding that nervous system regulation always means you're calm. And I don't think that that's true.
hmm.
If somebody comes up and slaps you in the face, it is normal and healthy for you to feel some anger and for
Yeah,
you to be like, dude, get off of me.
right.
Like,
Yeah,
what is wrong with you? You know? And so it would be weird and sort of robotic and alien to be like, oh, I'm sorry you're going through such a hard day. Why? Like, I don't know. It would just be like weird to be
right.
calm
Right.
in that. So when we see brutality in the world, when we see harm in the world, and we're impacted by that, that's normal. That's human. That means your heart is working. That means your empathy is working. Anger is a justice seeker. Anger wants to bring balance to the world, right? And so I would just name in that moment like, hey, there's a lot going on. It's human for you to feel something here. You're not a robot.
Hmm.
And again, just like noticing what happens when you do that. Like if you were to come into my office and I were to be like almost like colluding with you and they're like, yeah, we got to solve this problem. So what are the blah, 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 blah. What's the brainstorming here? And like what do we do? How do we fix this? I actually don't think that that's going to help.
Hmm.
There's room for that, right?
Right,
But
right.
just as I even as I just offered that, like, hey, and you can hopefully feel my nervous system with you, here with you, like, hey, sometimes it's hard. Sometimes there's a lot going on. We live in a society where there's a lot going on
Yes, there is.
all of the time, and we have access to a lot of information that our ancestors and our nervous systems, weren't meant to have all this input all the time. And so, like, even just noticing, like, as I just drop into some attunement with you, maybe some of it starts to just like settle a little bit. Like, yep, it's normal. And so I would just invite you first to greet whatever's here with some compassion. And then to say, yeah, and let's bring in some wisdom of discernment. What does it feel like? What feels like discomfort? Maybe even a healthy discomfort, because there's actually some places that maybe wouldn't be physically dangerous to me, but that I don't need to go to just because they're uncomfortable.
Right.
you know
Yeah.
like I there's some religious communities that don't feel safe for me. They might
Right.
not kill me,
Right.
but I don't need to go to them just because they're uncomfortable. But what discomfort feels like in service of expansion, in service of self growth, in service of my evolution, and what feels like avoidance, what feels like fear is driving the bus, what feels like deflection or defensiveness, you
Hmm.
know?
Yeah.
And I think the biggest information, like if I'm sitting with a decision, like, oh, do I engage in this conversation? Do I not? Do I have this whatever the decision is, can I just pause and sit with, like, just sit in the decision, and what does your body say? Usually, especially after some practice,
Hmm.
one decision will feel like fear, and it'll feel like constriction and keeping you small, and like a procedural patterning, like avoidance. I'm not going to deal with this. I'm not going to, and there's like a certain level of tightness, and one is going to feel like expansion. There still might be fear there, but it's going to feel like, even though this is a hard thing, I know that this hard thing is in service of expansion, growth, you know,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
mastery, self trust. And the more that you just practice, like, just asking the question, like, have me have clarity here. What would wisdom have me point my feet in the direction of? What feels like trauma response and what feels like intuition?
Hmm.
What is healthy discomfort and what is fear and avoidance?
Your
Is there a
definition.
downloadable handout to do that with? Nope. No, there's not. It
Aren't you
is
supposed?
not a, like, step by step, first this, then this, da da da. Nope, there's not. It's just
Aren't
a
you supposed to make
practice.
one?
Well, this is where I run into, is like, I don't think traditional marketing is trauma informed. Like,
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
guarantee you're gonna lose
Right.
15 pounds or whatever. Like, I don't know.
I don't
I don't
know.
know. But what I can invite you to know is that if you work with me, you're going to become more of who you are. And that might be really hard. You might want to quit your job. You might not be in the relationship that you want to be in. You might realize that your whole personality is actually a trauma response and you have no idea who you are.
Hmm.
But I'm going to ask you to look at stuff that you have been managing and compressing and avoiding for 40, 50, 60 years.
Hmm.
But there is liberation on the other side of that. And there's more spaciousness and there's more humanity and compassion and room for the mystery. And it feels way better than trying to compress and manage all of that. So,
And you you
it's
spend
not
some
an,
time in the book talking about trauma, right?
yeah.
Um, and you talk about big T trauma, little T trauma. Um, why do people minimize relational or developmental trauma?
Well, again, you have to survive it, right? You got to be like, this is fine. This is okay. This is fine. And we do that because, especially, let's say, like, extreme cases of abuse, you still, on an evolutionarily, like, basic level, know that your caregivers are your access to food, shelter, water.
Hmm.
So you have to attach to them. You have to make whatever's happening okay. And even if it's not big T abuse, even if it's just sort of that missing experience of having an attuned caregiver, you got the sense that maybe your parent was physically present but not really emotionally there, or you had a parent that maybe struggled with a like, quote unquote, low level addiction to alcohol, or you had a parent, or a divorce even, right? Or a, whatever, like, whatever it might be, if it wasn't sufficiently processed, you're going to hold on to that. So, yeah, I mean, trauma, there's a big definition, and it's subjective. And I would say we all have some. Just living in this world, it's pretty traumatic. And we're just now learning about ancestral trauma. Like, we can carry, some research is saying, like, we can carry up to 14 generations of
Hmm.
ancestral trauma. Like, think about what has happened in 14 generations.
Right. Right.
Some gnarly stuff has
Right.
happened in
Yeah.
14 generations. And the collective piece of that, the ancestral piece of that, that is stored in a way that maybe does not have content, that has been decontextualized over time, that might show up in parenting patterns, or, seemingly, even though you know better, that you have this big reaction to something, or you still react even though you've done years of therapy or whatever, right? Like, it might be just stored in this really, really deep way that's going to need a deeper level of work.
And there, towards the end of the book, we were talking about relationships, and you do a lot of it with relationship to yourself. Towards the end of the book, healing becomes less about fixing and more about relationship. So, how does reparenting the nervous system, what does that look like on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah. I think a great place to start is that question. Like, would I say this? What I'm saying to myself. And not even just what I'm saying, because that can be quite cognitive, but like the energy with which I am showing up. Braced, urgent, constricted, kind of gnarly energy. Is this how I would want to show up if my kid were feeling scared? Or if my best friend was feeling scared? Or if my dog was feeling scared and sad? How would I want someone to experience me? And, sometimes an intervention that I'll use with people is, imagine your 2-year-old self, your 4-year-old self, your 6-year-old self sitting across from you, and their little legs are dangling in the chair. And you say to them what you say to yourself. Ugh, you are the worst. You are such a piece of shit. Blah, 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 blah. Like, and that can really bring up, oh God, I would never say that to a 2-year-old or a 4-year-old or a friend or my dog.
Right.
And then to say, okay, so feel into that first, like feel the empathy that that brings up for you. Feel how mean and cruel we can be. And then what would you offer instead? How would you want the other person to experience you? What's the energy that you want them to feel in your body? Not just what you say with your words, because
Mm.
there can be a performative aspect of that too, right?
Right.
Like,
Oh, for
we've all
sure. Yeah.
probably had the boss or the parent even, or the friend that's like saying the right words, repeating what they read in the Brene Brown book or something. But there's an incongruence in the body, right? You can feel that it's performative, or you can feel that underneath it is resentment, or underneath it is rage, or underneath it is not what they're saying. And so what's the energy? And it might be a hard truth. It might be like, I'm really mad at myself, or I'm really scared. And then, okay, and what's in, stay with that. What are you noticing there? Can you just be with that? And when we do that, whether it's with other people or with ourselves, that's just the natural process. Like, it naturally softens. Emotions ride the wave we move through. When we are attuned, when we are bringing in the body, when we are kind of pulling the energy away from the content and the thinking, and we're moving more into a body awareness and a heart-centered awareness, that actually gets things to alchemize pretty quickly.
Hmm.
But oftentimes we think and then we feel, and then we think
Yeah.
again and we reignite the emotion, and we think and we feel, and we think and we feel, and we get sort of stuck in this head heart looping.
Right.
And that's not what we're talking about. That's called stewing in your own shit. That is not processing. That is not digestion. You probably need to take a break and go for a walk. But if you're actually like, where do I feel this in my body? What is the actual emotion that I'm feeling? And you show up with an energy that you would want to show up with your dog or your kid or your best friend. It actually helps. And, another one of my like catchphrases that I think I repeat a couple times in the book is, if criticism and judgment were effective change agents, we would all be enlightened by now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've I've criticized the hell out of, I mean, I would be the most healed person alive
Right.
if criticism and perfectionism worked. But they it's not. I love my perfectionist. She did a good job. My critic has tried to like help, but I have to sort of remind them, like, honeys, I appreciate you. You've taken me as far as you can, and I need you to sit down. And sometimes we need to bring like stern grandmother energy, like, I need you to sit the fuck down and shut the fuck up. I love you,
Yeah.
but not today. Right.
And
So,
really honestly, that one of okay, one of my, I'll just put it this way. I don't know if anybody else has problems with this or troubles with this or what, but one of my biggest struggles is boundaries. And we're talking about the relationship with boundaries. And a lot of times I think we grow up in systems where boundaries almost become like you're selfish. It's like a
right.
selfishness. And we have to get to that point where boundaries become a place of safety. And I mean, if you want to call it selfishness, that's okay, but it's okay to be be selfish every now and then. Um,
Yeah.
and I just had a situation, just within the past couple of weeks. I had to set a firm boundary, and it was amazing to me afterwards. Um, Even now, it's just almost like there's this, this idea and this feeling of being free, because you set that boundary, and even in the struggle, they try to pull you back in, and it's like, no, no, you can't. You either accept me for who I am now, or I'm sorry, this relationship has gone nowhere. How do you work through that process with somebody where um, we should see boundaries as a safety rather than a selfishness?
Yeah. And I, again, here's Brene Brown again, showing up twice in the interview. Um, but I do think her language around it is so helpful, which is that compassion and boundaries are inextricably linked. And if I don't set a boundary, if my body is a full body no for something and I do it anyway, then I am immediately in a place of resentment with
Hmm.
that person.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so the mantra that I tell myself when I have to have a difficult conversation is, boundaries are the kindest thing. Boundaries are the kindest thing because it actually maintains my ability to hold this person in a place of compassion, or to hold the society in a place of compassion.
right.
Like, I am happier when I can operate from the assumption that people are doing the best that they can. And if the best that they can is harmful, then they need to live out here. They need to
Right.
live on the outer rings of my social orbit.
Hmm.
But that boundary is the kindest thing because I can hold them in that place of, you are doing the best you can. I can hold you in a place of compassion, but I'm only able to do that if I have this boundary with you. And it's hard, like, I think, again, just recognizing, like, listen, boundaries are hard. Boundaries are nuanced. We want to be able to set them in a way that's not weaponizing them, or not trying to control other people, or trying to, um, you know, exert dominance over other people, or whatever, right? But boundaries are needed in order for us to be able to stay in a place of compassion. And the other thing that I would say in terms of selfishness is, I really like to reframe the whole hierarchical, like, I've got to put me first. I got to put me first all the time. And I got to maintain healthy boundaries so that I can take care of myself. Well, that doesn't actually resonate with me. Like, I actually value showing up for the people that I love, showing up with big love, showing up for my community, being of service. And so I like to actually think of it as a cyclical thing. Like, I need to put gas in the tank. I need to have boundaries for myself so that I can show up in my medicine for the world, so that I can be the grounded presence for my kids and my partner, so that I can be, and my clients, so that I can be in an anchored, regulated, congruent space for people. Because if I'm frenetic and like just a mess, then the world doesn't get my medicine. And I believe that I have medicine, and I believe that actually everybody here has something to offer the
Right.
world, has
Yeah.
medicine to offer the world. And we're not healing just for ourselves. We're not healing on just an individual level. We are here at this wild time of being alive because we are here to pull this collective closer to love, to reciprocity with one another, to equity, to joy, to beauty. And I think that old paradigm of punishment, dominance, transactional relationships, extraction, we know that that's no longer serving, and that old paradigm is dying, and it knows it's dying. And we see a really big doubling down on those values.
I mean, you're right, because you're talking about when you're setting your boundaries, what you're talking about is allowing someone, and you said it, I may not get this word for word, but it resonated me with me when you said it, is that other person is doing what they know to do, um, who they are maybe or whatever. I mean, I'm just gonna say it. I mean, we're living in a day where it's tough to walk down a sidewalk anymore. It's tough to walk down the road without something happening or at the fear of something happening. And there are
Mm-hmm.
people that justify it. There are people who believe that this is the way it should be done. We live in that dynamic now, and it's tough. And religion is, a big culprit for that. So then it falls on us. It falls on me to sit here and think, I got to have a boundary. But at the same time, I also know that the person on the other side of that boundary is maybe doing the best that they can do.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
may not know any
Yeah.
different,
Yeah.
and they probably don't know any different. I think we're at the time now where, the church has to stand up and say, no, this is not right. What we're doing here
Yeah.
is not good.
Right.
And we're pushing people away from the church and not towards it. Having said that, for the listener who feels stuck, there's someone here to say, I've done the work, right? Why am I still here? Integration for me has just been, it's the frustrating part of the whole journey.
Yeah.
Getting back to what we were talking earlier about sometimes you're putting in the work and you see things happen. You can see it, you can feel it. You feel like you're coming ahead. You're finally grasping things, and then things slow down. Nothing happens. And you're just sitting here, okay, what's going on? Right?
Yeah.
Um, what would you want that person to hear at this point?
Welcome to the party, baby. There is there is no amount of therapy or healing that is going to take you out of the human experience. And I show this video in a lot of trainings, but it's basically this guy that's like anyway, I'll just kind of do my own version of it. It's like, healed and not healed. And you're like, "Oh, I'm healing. I'm not. I got a call from my mother and I'm back at 4 years old. And I'm doing some EMDR and some breath work. I'm back at 3 years old and I remembered a traumatic memory. And now I'm healing again. And I'm on a sugar cleanse, and I've had a sugar binge, and I'm a mess again because I don't need sugary snacks. And the people that say that they have arrived, that they're spiritually enlightened, that they are there all the time, are very much unhealed still.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
if we can learn to have a little bit of fun, take ourselves a little less seriously with the messiness and the hey, it might be unattainable, but it's still worth pointing our feet in the direction of it. And better is better. And making room for a little bit of that uncertainty and messiness. And I think that, back to sort of the collective or the religious lens of things, right? Like again, we're humans and we love certainty. you
Oh
know,
yeah.
if
Oh yeah.
we get a chance at certainty, even if it's a false sense of certainty. Oh, I get to be right and others are wrong. I get to be good and others are bad. I get to be, whatever. And I get to other people. And then it's nice and clean. And my life is nice and clean. And I get certainty. And dogmatic religion that leaves no room for mystery or messiness, it's like a drug. Tap it in, baby. Give me that certainty. And it's human and we can have compassion. It's like, oh, honey, like you are just wanting certainty. And that tells me that there's a lot of unhealed stuff in you,
Hmm.
that there's a lot of parts of you that haven't gotten any time at the table and that you've been managing. And it's human and I can have compassion. Now, if you're causing harm, I again am going to like put you out here in my
Right.
boundaries. Like I'm going to like and there's different kinds of boundaries too. There's energetic boundaries, time spent boundaries, proximity boundaries. Not all boundaries have to be verbalized. There can be an energetic boundary with you and the other person, right? That sometimes you don't explain or verbalize your boundaries because it's not going to go well. You just do it. You just
Yeah.
you just don't spend time with them, or
Yeah.
you just don't engage in the conversation, or you just
Yeah.
you know you don't. You're like, you're really triggering my childhood trauma. Blah 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 blah. Like no. That's a first ring conversation. This person is a sixth ring person. You don't give them all your vulnerability and all
Hmm.
your explaining and all your story, because that's not going to go well. That's not safe.
Hmm.
Oh, man, it's messy. It's messy, but it's worth it to just point your feet in the direction. And I'll end my little once again non-linear rant with the metaphor I use in the book, like this kaleidoscope. Like we are here in this iteration, and a kaleidoscope is perfect. It's in its current pattern and it's here and it's whole and it's great just as it is. And then you might turn the colors, right? You might start composting those patterns and you might start doing some work, and then whoop, you're in this iteration. And then you might compost some more and like live into this some more and practice more of who you are, and then whoop, you're in this iteration. And really you're just becoming more and more of who you already are. It's not what I do think a more like perfectionist, and I would even say like a traditional maybe Judeo-Christian view is like this idea that the path is narrow, that there's this perfect version of yourself out here that you have to hustle for. And I would like to just invite that actually who you are becoming is what is always and already your true nature.
Oh.
And that might bump up against some religious teachings where we're
Yeah.
inherently bad or we're inherently sinful. And I respectfully, invite you to bump up against that, like to wrestle with that a little bit. Is that actually serving you to believe that you are inherently wrong and bad and sinful?
Right. Right.
Um, because if you're inherently good-ish,
Yeah.
if you're inherently okay, then maybe there's a little room for you to be messy and for mistakes to be safe and for mistakes to actually be required for learning. And but if you, that idea brings me such comfort that what I am growing into is what is always and already my true nature. I'm just, we're all, what I would invite is for you to just become more and more of who you really are. And I really do believe that most humans, when they are in a state of health and safety and connection and self reflection, that most humans are good ish.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
we all have shadow,
So the
but we're
moral of
all,
this,
a lot of us are programmed.
yeah, yeah. And I mean that certainty that you're talking about, it allows us to, hey, as long as I'm living my life this way, I can do whatever I want to people that aren't in my circle, that aren't in my bubble.
Right. That's right.
And so you get this, I'm doing what I need to do to stay in this tribe over here. And
Yep.
it doesn't matter what I can do to this tribe over here. And that's,
Yeah.
again, um,
Yeah.
that gets into
And we
a lot
tell
of
this,
stuff.
we tell ourselves the story that we're right
Yeah.
in it, we're justified in it,
Yeah.
that we're on the right side of things. And, you know, that's what I'm saying. Like when you think you're done, when you think you're right, when you think you don't have anything to learn, that is when you cause harm.
So the moral of the story is get messy.
Get messy. Yeah. Get your hands dirty. Come on in. The water's
Come,
fine.
come on.
You know, get on in
That's
here,
right.
y'all. Like,
What I
we're all just
appreciated
walking
most
each
about
other
this
home.
book is that it refuses to turn healing into another hierarchy. And so what it does is it asks us to become better versions of ourselves. It asks us to become safer with who we already are. Always enough, still becoming, never done, but no longer at war with ourselves. So, final question, Erica. If there is one thing you take from this book that you want the readers to embody, what do you hope changes in how they treat themselves tomorrow?
Well, what I would say to everyone is whatever work you are doing, it matters. And it doesn't just matter for you, it matters because you are part of this great web of life. And you are part of a, a larger collective turning and a larger collective healing. And the ripples that when you heal yourself, even if it's just a little bit, most change happens in seemingly innocuous, almost immeasurable ways. And then you look back 6 months or a year and you're like, whoa, I am a totally different version of myself.
Yeah.
And so just point your feet, just asking yourself, what is the direction that wisdom, that love, that compassion, that the understanding that we are inextricably connected to one another, that what I do to someone else, I do to myself. What would those values have you do?
Hmm.
Where would you point your feet? And if you just do that a little bit every day, Anne Lamott, I don't know if you know Anne Lamott, but she talks about like, it's like driving at night with your headlights on. You can't see the whole way there, but you make the whole journey with just pointing your feet in the direction of wisdom. And it's messy and it's nonlinear. It's not a straight up and to the right. You're going to have bad days and you're going to feel like you're back at square one, but you're not.
Erica, thank you so much for stopping by with us tonight. I love the practicality of the book. Um, I think that there's going to be a version two coming out at some point.
Yeah.
So on your way out, why don't you go ahead and tell us where to get the book? Maybe tell us how to get in touch with you or the business, and when is that second book slated to come out?
You're we'll see.
Oh, really?
Well, it's mostly written,
Okay.
but I'm sort of setting up this program and whatever, so my focus is elsewhere, but I'm hoping that it's going to be by the end of the year.
Okay, good.
So yeah, but my website is just avos, avos counseling.com. And I can work with you around coaching, around nervous system regulation. You can find the book on there. If you order it from the website, you get a signed copy from me. And then you can also find it on Amazon. But if you want to order it directly from the website, you get it in a pretty green envelope with a personal message from
Yeah, that's
me.
cool. You can't beat that right there.
um, yeah, but yeah, wherever, and I had just a robot basically read the book because I would like to record the audiobook myself at some point, but um again, there's just other priorities in the works there. So
Yeah, that I
um
yeah.
yeah,
I
I
hear that's a process.
it is a total process, and I'm working up the energy for it, but again, I just want it in the world. And so there is an audiobook, there's a Kindle book on Amazon. But yeah, and you can find out more about my services, working with me. All of that is on the website. And then I think I also sent you a free handout if people want to download that. And that actually has tons of nervous system regulation practices and like 6 guided meditations. And so that's just a free resource that I offer people. And so hopefully, I think I sent you that, and maybe we can put that
Yes, yes, you did
in the
send me
show
that.
notes
Yeah,
as
and I'll
well.
get that put in the show notes. So, um,
Yeah.
yeah,
But that's
that
on the
that'll be
website
for.
too. You can find that on the resources page. So
All righty. So thank you very much, Erica Bonham, for stopping by, and
thank
hope
you
you
so
have a
much,
wonderful
Dennis.
evening. All right. Bye bye.
So nice to connect.